Okay, and I think we're live. Hello, everyone who's joining on YouTube. Thanks for joining me. We're talking with Carl from Lectrosonics about the Duet digital wireless monitoring system with Dante inputs, and it's kind of big release for them for NAB, which is very exciting. How's it going, Carl, with your run-up to NAB?
Great. Well, it's super exciting, and we just posted it yesterday officially after informing our dealers about it on Tuesday, so that they would have a little bit of a head start. And the reaction has been overwhelming. I mean, mostly we see it in social media, on Facebook, and how many times it's been shared, and the website with the press release has been viewed, I don't know, 3,000 times now, something like that. So the reaction seems very good, very positive. And every product introduction is a little bit of a, we never really know how it will be received. But one thing we've noticed with this one is that it doesn't seem like we've missed anything obvious. So that's very reassuring. People seem to be very warm to all the ideas that are built into this product. Rather than saying, why doesn't it do this, why doesn't it do that, which we do get that sometimes. So it seems very positive. And we struggled a little bit whether or not we should introduce it before NAB, but we felt like it's one of the two big shows in the States that would be right for it, because really it has dual purpose. It can be an IFB, and very competitive with our older IFB system in terms of pricing per channel in a multi-channel situation. But with features way beyond, what the old system delivers. I mean, the original IFB was designed in the late 1990s, so we've come a long way from there in terms of technology available. And then its second entire market really is live performance. So it's got a lot of different people looking at it for different reasons, which is exciting. But NAB is, of course, primarily a broadcast show and filmmaking, and so we'll show it in that context because it definitely does those things well.
Fantastic. And I will just let everyone know that we are live streaming right now, unless you're watching the recording. So you should see a live thing somewhere, and then you can get down in the comments below and ask questions. There is, I think, about a 60-second delay. So don't worry, we will try and get to all the questions. And yeah, so let's just start with the components of the whole system. Just walk me through the units.
Sure enough. Well, probably the most fun, if you will, is the receiver unit. And basically, this is a 2-channel audio receiver. It's going to pick up a single RF carrier. It's digital modulation, and it's 2-antenna diversity, which is pretty rare for an IFB or IEM type receiver. There may be 1 or 2 others out there, but this is, it's certainly an advanced feature to have real diversity with real antennas on the unit. It's got a single knob. It's got your headphone jack here, and then on the top you've got a 2-way infrared sync, which we'll talk a little bit more about in a few minutes. It runs on 2 AA batteries. The case is very similar in size and shape to an LT type transmitter. It's the same thickness as an LT. It's a little bit longer, but it uses the same accessories. Like, you can set this thing up with a LT Battle M as an example. Okay, so the physical structure of it's very much like an LT, has the USB jack on the side for firmware updates, and uses the same belt clip, the stiff wire belt clip from an LT. Where it really diverges is on the display is a very large, I think it's 1.5 by 1.5 color with very high resolution. So that gives us the ability to have a lot of information, in this display. So like if I go into the menus, you can see that, it's just a very rich display with a lot of good information. Let me try and find something that's a fun, detail-rich thing, like the scan window. You can see that, it's very, very detailed. And what's interesting too, this covers the entire frequency band from 470 megahertz to 608, okay, in the US, and up to 614 for the European version. So, when you see the scan window here, everything looks really small because it's covering 138 megahertz. So that's another important thing about the product. Let's see here, menu-wise, we're going to... Still learning the product, of course. It's new for me. I first saw it last Friday. So let's see. A nice feature here too for any sort of IEM listeners or IFB is a built-in limiter function. I'm not sure if you can really see that, but Yeah, there we go. You can actually set a threshold and then a pre-gain, which allows you to really carefully contour, how when you turn up the knob, kind of what happens.
Right.
So you can kind of set it up to have sort of a max volume level. You can push the signal into that compression and so on. So really gives you a tremendous amount of flexibility, which I think is very powerful. Another window we should look at here is the mixer. And this is where we can determine if it's a stereo receiver or mono picking up only channel 1 or only channel 2 as an example. And so again, this is where you would choose how to use it as an IFB, for instance. And the transmitter is sending out 1 or 2 stereo signals or 2-channel signals from one transmitter unit. It really has 2 separate transmitters inside it, if you will. So there's two dual channel carriers coming out of a half rack transmitter. And in a minute, I'll show you the transmitter itself. I'm going to move the camera, but so users could feed the transmitter with up to 4 mono signals or 2 stereo signals from analog or from Dante on a digital network. And then the receivers can be, stereo receivers or mono picking up one of those single channels. So from a single half rack unit, you can have up to 4 mono IFB channels. So in one rack space, 8 mono IFB feeds on 4 RF carriers. So it's twice as dense as anything else that we know about, and or anything we make. I mean, the IFB T4, you can rack 4 of those in a single rack space. This is twice as dense as that, with only half the carriers of doing that. So that was kind of the goal, was to make it denser than anything else and more flexible to use for a variety of purposes.
Fantastic. And I mean, just being able to fit in as well with with obviously all the spectrum that's available as well is fantastic.
Yeah.
And just looking at that menu screen, it seems like the customization is pretty insane in terms of just being able to fully control, instead of just giving someone a pack and just having it kind of on and off and doing all the configurations the other side.
Right.
Talk to me more about that.
Sure. So I was just going to make a comment, though. There's a lot of situations where you don't want to give the user, if you will, there's 2 ways to look at it. The user would be, let's say, you or me, right? But then who do we hand it to? And do we want them to be able to touch anything? And so there's a lockout, of course. So then when you hand it to them and you want it to be a mono IFB on this frequency, doing mono left channel only or whatever it is, lock it out, hand it to them. The only thing that they can touch is the knob. And that's the way you want an IFB receiver, right? I mean, the problem with our older units, if you push scan and it jumps, they go, what happened to my signal?
Yeah.
So that's always an issue. But we figured that with the variety of uses, we'd need a lockout screen.
Fantastic. And then obviously then a boom op or anyone else, a tech listening in, can obviously have full control over listening in on multiple feeds. And then you've got that flexibility there as well.
That's right, the multiple feeds thing. So there's a feature called FlexList, and what it will be is a menu item that lets you go in and add, carriers with their names associated to this list. So you would go up to the various transmitters, add another, channel, if you will, with a name, and then if you wanted to be able to hop between the different feeds, you simply go to that list and say, I'm going to go from Scott's feed to Jeff's feed to the boom op to whatever. Producer feed, whatever, and you just simply hop and it'll pick it right up. So, and because it's one spectrum band, you don't have to worry about, well, it's on a different block. There is no other block. This is the only block. So
that's fantastic. And
yeah,
so let's have a look. Should we do the wireless designer first, or do you want to show me the actual rack itself?
Yeah, I'll show you wireless designer, because that's a whole part of the ecosystem. It's a full system, which we wanted it to be as well, not just a product. So let me switch screens and show you wireless designer. For those that aren't familiar with it, I'll give you a quick rundown, and then I'll explain how the new system fits into this ecosystem. So let me switch screens here. Okay, you should see that now. And so what we're seeing here is in wireless designer, over on the left, we have the various frames that are attached. In this case, I have a Venue 2 frame with a B1 and a C1 module attached. And then I have an M2T, and it's telling us band A1, B1 and band A1, B1. So it really sees within that frame 2 transmitters in the frame, as I mentioned before. Okay, you can see the serial number here, 000003. So it's early. Yeah, this is a 1 of 3. No. Okay, so we can look at just one of these individual frames, or we can look what I was doing before at the whole session, which would include all of your wireless units attached in one place. Okay, so what we can do here is look at the details of any of these units. So I'm looking at a Venue 2 right now. This is where I'd come in and look at my receiver module. I can decide if that module is powered. I can give it a name. I can decide how diversity is, whether it's talkback, and so on. And this is all the details that Wireless Designer gives you. Then I can look at my transmitter and determine, the step size and what kind of batteries it's got, if I want to do a battery timer, and then send my settings over infrared to a transmitter. Okay, so as an example, let's see here. Which one is that? I'm going to go ahead and blast in an infrared signal and then show you how that works. I'm going to do it with the C1 unit here because I've got a C1 SSM. So holding it up to the infrared window, I'm going to send the settings to the transmitter. Okay, the settings have been sent. Now to confirm, I'm going to power on my transmitter, and we'll see that the RF window now should light up. And the blue link light comes on, telling us we got a good channel.
Nice.
Right. So if I hooked a microphone up to this, then we would see audio level and so on. So now in the context, we see all of our units here. Now I've got a live transmitter showing my battery level and my link light. I can mute my output. Okay. So that's typically how people have been using Wireless Designer, is with the Venue or Venue 2 system. Okay. Now the M2 Duet system is going to be the reverse of that. We've got transmitters hooked up to Wireless Designer now directly. And so we can look at the detail of a transmitter and give it a name. So this is my NAB demo unit 1. It's already on this frequency. We see what transmitter power level it's on, and things like that. So, but here's where things get really fun. Okay, let me come back to something here. Actually, what I'm going to do is show you. Let's move on to the front panel of the transmitter, because I've got to try to tile this together, and there's a lot going on here. And this is my first time showing anybody outside the factory. So let me move my camera. I'll switch back, and I'll show you the front panel, and I'm going to show you what we're going to do. The fun thing is the receiver does a spectrum scan, as I showed you. And then we can actually send that information into the transmitter via infrared, and then it populates Wireless Designer. Okay, so then we can do a frequency coordination using this scan data. And it's so powerful and amazing. So let's see here. I'm going to switch screens back to, now we should see front panel. There we go. So here we have the M2R. It's a half rack unit with a big color display. And what we're seeing is I'm sending audio on channel 1 and 2 here via Dante. So we're seeing the meters moving there a little bit. And then below that is a Venue 2. So these are the 2 units that I've got hooked up to Wireless Designer. So here's what I'll show you now. In the scan menu, we already did a scan. So let me just get back in there. Okay, so there we see the spectrum that we found. Now, I'm going to go to my transmitter, and I'm going to go up to, let's see, where is that? Sync scan is the menu item. Probably kind of hard to see with the LCD. Sorry about that. Have to take my word for it. So there's a choice that says add scan. So I'm going to push select. Now I hold my receiver near my transmitter infrared port and press the add scan button. So now what's happened is the scan data from the receiver has been entered into the transmitter. Okay, follow me?
Yeah.
And so now we would go back to Wireless Designer. So I'll share that screen again. And we go to our frequency scan window, and lo and behold, there is our scan data. And what we see here is mostly DTV. Okay, each one of these 6 megahertz bumps is going to be a DTV channel. And then there is a carrier, probably from someone else in the building with one of these. Okay, it's probably Renee over at the other side of the sales office, because he's got one of these that he's playing with as well. And then here we see a wireless mic transmitter, probably somewhere in the building. So that's what we see. Now we can bring that into frequency coordination. Oh, I need to export to frequency coordination. Now that shows up here, and my 4 carriers for my 4 wireless units, the 2 receivers and 2 transmitters, are here. Now, if these happen to land on something bad, you know, it'll start to warn you with a conflict, right? So let's just say we didn't pick these things in advance, right? And it's stepping on them. We can have the computer coordinate these channels. Boom, it's picked clean channels for us. We're going to deploy it to our system. So now we've sent clean frequencies to both transmitters in the M2 system and both receivers in the venue system, coordinated together. That's the concept here. It's a full system that we've now coordinated, okay? So now we see nice low noise floors in our receivers, and our transmitters are humming away here. So we would go back to this and send our settings back to our receiver now. I'm going to send my frequency to the receiver. Okay, I've done that. And now I'll switch back, and we'll see once I turn on transmission. In fact, let me do that now. RF enabled. I've turned on my transmitter. Once again, we see the blue light. We'll close this guy. Oh, look at that. My noise floor came up on the other 2 because it's literally sitting on top of it. You don't want to do that. You don't want to have the units stacked on top of each other. But let's go back to the this camera. And now we see nice RF level here, and I see my audio meters moving, showing me that I've got a live signal here. So that was it. We coordinated 4 channels just in a matter of seconds by using scan data from this unit, which covers the whole band between 470 and 608. So that's kind of the workflow that I would typically use and you can, the scan data is cumulative. You can actually do scans with multiple units of receiver, and they'll all overlay on each other. And you could also scan with your venue too if you wanted to add all that information together. Wow. And then coordinate with that data. So that's kind of the new system approach to how all these things would work together, if that makes sense.
Yeah, that is phenomenal that there's kind of so much information packed, and yet you're pretty much, for every one step, you're pretty much only clicking one button. There isn't a kind of crazy import export thing. It's just click, 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 very kind of logical throughput, which is amazing.
And it's possible with the front panel of the unit. I mean, of course, it takes a little more time because you've got to navigate through the various menus as you go up and down. You know, there's a lot going on inside this. We've got the sync, as I showed you. Here's your RF enable screen and your level. This transmitter has 3 RF levels, 50 milliwatts, 25, or 10. And then you can manually tune it if you like. Here's the sync scan that we saw before, where we pulled scan data from the receivers. Here's sync settings, where I would sync all the settings that are populated in Wireless Designer through the unit to the receivers. Here's our audio level and trim, and this allows us, particularly with analog inputs, to decide, you know, what's our reference, whether it's a +4 type source or a -10 type source. And then there's plus or minus 5 dB of trim. You can also mute individual channels if you need to do some testing. And you know, all along you're seeing there's A and B here. We're really only playing around with one side of this transmitter, but it does 2 full stereo feeds. And then this is our audio input type. Right now I'm running it in with Dante. And so let me show you the back panel, because that also gives us some insight into this unit. If I can turn it around, I got so many cables.
Yeah.
It's a little tangly in here. I should have tried this before now, but let's see here. We'll make it happen. If I pull down the desk around myself by accident here, you'll know why. So let's see. Yeah, you can see it. So here's our Dante. This is the Ultimo type input. It's a 4x4 Dante, so that's where our 4 audio channels can be fed in. That's how I'm feeding it now. 2 antenna ports, one for A and one for B. Here's our DC 15 volt in, which is very typical of our products. And then here's our analog inputs, and these are combo XLR quarter-inch jacks, because sometimes people have quarter-inch feeds coming from a console for whatever reason. And then Ethernet, and that's where we could be hooking up Wireless Designer. I have it running on USB on my desk just for convenience at the moment, but the idea is this is a totally network operable unit, and then can be fed from Dante. So, one question people have is about latency when talking about an in-ear type or an IFP system. Analog systems have the one great advantage is zero latency in a sense. And this system is not analog. So most digital systems are between, let's say, maybe the high 2s or so milliseconds, 2.9 or so, up to, we've seen systems as high as 7 point something, so, and oftentimes, for film, that's not a big deal. That's still less than a frame. So not a problem there. But when it comes to in-ear feeds, it can be a problem, especially for live performers and for boom ops, that are trying to watch what they're doing and listen carefully live. So this system has 1.4 milliseconds of latency. We believe it's the lowest there is, analog to analog, for a digital system like this. If you're feeding it from a Dante feed, it's only 1 additional millisecond from the Dante source. So, we can't control what happens upstream from this unit, but, we really worked hard to minimize latency on the back end. So in a sense, thinking about Dante, most digital mixing consoles have latency of about 2 or 2.5 milliseconds, and half of it's on the way in or so, or a third of it's on the way in, and a third is processing, and a third is on the way out. So this represents the on the way outside. So by having 1 millisecond, that's actually approximately what it would be for an on the way out of a console. So really, it's no additional latency in most scenarios, as long as you've kept all of your other stuff proper, and as minimum sample rate conversions as possible, as minimum plugins as possible. So with a latency, let's say in the digital realm, from an analog mic back to this earphone of, let's say, 2.5 milliseconds, that's awfully short. That's not something a boom op would notice. That's not an echo or a delay. That's really way down into the granular level. To hear a distinct echo or a delay, you've got to have at least 5 to 10 milliseconds. So this is well below that. So we're pretty proud of that. We think that that's not going to be an issue. But of course, proof's in the pudding. People need to listen to it and determine its value for themselves. So at the NAB show, here I'm going to switch cameras again. Let me get this thing moved up, and pardon the
yeah, no, that's all right.
The C
no,
thing.
I can talk while we do the behind the scenes moving, and that should work very well. We've had one question so far, which is about for using it with a body pack transmitter for bag mixers out there. So I guess this is trying to combine either combine it either way. Do you have to have the whole unit all together? Will it work with anything else?
Right, I understand the question. So the answer is this is a system in and of itself, and because it's digital modulation of a new type that we've just developed, it currently is not compatible with anything else that we make or that anyone makes, as far as we know. So we've started to get that question since announcing it yesterday. What about a portable transmitter? And my first answer is, hey, this half rack unit with DC power is portable. But no, I understand for bag use you want a belt pack type unit, and so we've already racked that up on our list of things to consider. It makes a lot of sense to us, and so I would just say stay tuned for future announcements. Impossible to estimate a time frame, but we hear you and we understand the need for it, and it makes a lot of sense.
It's fantastic, even just seeing it again compared to the venue and everything. It's basically a half rack, so it's almost fitting kind of straight into a bag anyway. If you can, or on a cart. It's more of a cart scenario.
It's really more of a cart thing, but it's easy to integrate it into a cart. Pull off your DC power. It'll take everything from, I believe, 8 to 18 volts is typical for our products. So it could run off your deep cell battery on a cart, and then run a separate antenna mast up like you would for an IFB, and you're good to go. So it's very cart ready as it is. The unit can be rack mounted, the transmitter unit. It comes with hardware, so if you bought two, for instance, they would rack together very easily with the supplied hardware. So, and I think that there's an optional mounting kit for a single unit that you can buy. It's reasonable cost if you just wanted to rack mount one unit. So all that's going to be available. But yeah, for bag use, that's a future development. That's not something that we really designed it for at this point. So,
Yeah.
but
I mean,
we understand.
Yeah, you're already covering so many bases anyway, with obviously not just film, but with kind of live venues, music. Like you've got pretty much everything else going on anyway. And with the customization, that's pretty insane. So in terms of, talk to me about NAB, where will you be? Where can people find it, find more information?
Sure. We're going to be in the Central Hall at C3322. This product will be live on the kiosk right alongside our analog IFB system. So there's going to be a kiosk with IFB and IEM together, so you can compare and contrast them. I don't think we ever have the IFB system live because everyone's pretty much familiar with it now, but this system will be there. We'll be playing a CD through it via Dante, so people can put on headphones and listen live and walk around a little bit, get a sense of the audio quality, which, by the way, is stunning, I must say. 24-bit digital. It doesn't sound like any IEM or IFB that I've ever seen, other than our old Quadra system, which is long gone now. So pretty exciting on the sound quality front here.
Fantastic. Well, I look forward to kind of hearing more about it. Sadly, not going to be able to. It was touch and go whether I can make it to NAB, but unfortunately not this year. But I'm going to try next year as well, and try and eventually get out there and meet you in person as well. Should also be awesome.
Well, yeah, that'd be fun. We'd love to have you out, and to drink on us for making the way across the ocean and across the whole U.S. pretty much. So yeah. Sorry, we'll miss you this year. It's going to be a heck of a year. I mean, a lot of appointments booked and a lot of interest for this product, and we're going to have a very, very busy booth, which is the way we like it. Fantastic.
Right. Well, yeah, that pretty much wraps it up. There's no more questions at the moment, and we've covered a heck of a lot about everything from wireless design all the way through the units. So anyone out there who still has questions, you can comment, I guess, below on this video, and I'll forward them on to Carl. But yeah, that's pretty much all it for me. Just thank you very much for coming, and I'll leave you with the kind of final goodbye.
Well, thanks for jumping on it, Matt. As always, a pleasure to chat with you and show you what we're doing. And we welcome visitors to the booth and questions. And you can come to our Facebook group, Lectrosonics on Facebook, and ask questions there. There's already a bunch of threads and discussions about the product, as well as other topics. So welcome all comers.
Fantastic. And I'll link that group in the description below as well. So anyone out there who isn't already signed up to them can do it now.
There might be a few.
Yeah, but other than that, yeah, subscribe and be back for more good stuff. And I'll try and get you pinned down for some more stuff for some of your other releases, maybe.
Sure thing. When the time comes, we'll do it.
Fantastic.